Muslims by Ali Mahmoud. Episode 1. When the Prophet Muhammad left Mecca for Medina, he had less than 100 followers. Within a century after his death, the Muslims had conquered all the territory from the Atlantic Ocean to China, and the Empire of Islam led the world in science, education, medicine, culture, commerce, and war. This empire dominated the world for 1,000 years. The two empires that followed after the 17th century were, in comparison, short-lived. The British Empire lasted for 200 years, and its successor, the American Empire, is in decline after only 60 years. Between the 7th and the 17th centuries, Muslim power shifted from the Arabs to the Persians, the Turks, and the Moguls. The capital of the Islamic Empire moved from the sands of Mecca and Medina to Damascus, Baghdad, Cairo, Cordoba, and Istanbul as new dynasties replaced the old: the Umayyad, the Abbasid, the Fatimid, followed by Tamerlane, the world conqueror, and the three gunpowder empires: the Ottoman, the Safavid, and the Mogul. The golden centuries of the world of Islam flourished, while the dark ages of Europe kept life nasty, brutish, and short. The great libraries of the caliphs in Cordoba and Baghdad ran to 500,000 books, while the great European collections did not even reach 1,000 volumes. The canons of Avicenna, Ibn Sina, dominated medicine in Europe for 500 years, and Ibn Furnus demonstrated flight at the age of 76, 600 years before Da Vinci drew his sketches, but never risked an actual attempt to fly. The 1,000 years of the Islamic Empire were a time of great achievement, great institutions, great cities, and most of all, great men. When Saladin conquered Jerusalem and Bailan, the Christian general reminded him of the cruelty and barbarism of the earlier Christian conquest. Saladin gently but firmly replied, "I am not of those men. I am Saladin." He gave away all that came to him as ruler and died penniless, without even the money for a decent burial. Suleiman the Magnificent, before whom the world trembled, was the preeminent sovereign in both Asia and Europe. This remarkable era is the legacy of the Prophet and of those he inspired to pursue education, justice, and merit. It was these values and attitudes that took the Muslims up, and it was the loss of these values and attitudes that, in the 17th century, brought the Muslims crashing down. After 1,000 years at the top, the Muslims spent 200 years at the bottom. The former masters of the universe were deprived and humiliated by their new lords from the West. They became a people without hope. The Europeans had guns and technology through which they acquired the wealth of the world and became masters of all for 3 centuries. But by the 20th century, 2 world wars led to 100 million deaths and weakened them till they no longer had the appetite or resources to maintain their empires. As the Europeans departed, secular nation-states were born in the Muslim world, and new leaders attempted to pull their nations out of the debris of the past. Today, the word Muslim brings up visions of oil, petrodollars, jihad, or terrorism, and veiled women. These have become the key issues that define the relationship of the Muslim world with the West. But as we will see in this documentary, this isn't a reflection of the 1,400 plus years of Islamic history. The Prophet Muhammad. Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, is recognized by Muslims and non-Muslims alike as the most influential man in human history. He was supremely successful, both as a religious leader and as a political leader. Muhammad was born in 570 AD in Mecca. His father Abdullah died before he was born. His mother, Amina, died when he was 6 years old, and he grew up as an illiterate orphan. When he tried to explain his religion, Islam, to the citizens of Mecca, he was ridiculed and attacked. By 622, the year of the Hijrah, when he moved to Medina, there were hardly 100 followers of Islam. In Medina, over the next 11 years, he built up his community, conquered Mecca, and died in 633 AD. Within 12 years of the death of Muhammad, his successors, inspired by his teachings and his values, under the leadership of the first two caliphs, Abu Bakr and Umar, conquered the Persians and the Byzantines and created the most important empire in the world. Within 100 years, this empire stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the borders of China. The Empire of Islam dominated the world for 1,000 years. Muhammad learned the caravan trade working for his uncle Abu Talib and later joined the service of Khadija, a prosperous woman who was to become his first wife. She had been married twice before, and the death of her husband had left her wealthy with a share in the caravan cartel. Khadija was a merchant woman of dignity and wealth. Despite the age difference, Khadija was 40 to Muhammad's 25, she decided he was the man for her and she proposed to him. For 24 years, they were happy together till the time of her death. They had 4 daughters and 2 sons, both of whom died in infancy. As Muhammad entered his 40th year, he seemed to have it all, a loving family, wealth and respect. But despite his apparent success, he was tormented with discontent. Then, in Ramadan in the year 610, when he retired into solitude, he experienced revelation, as an angel came to him saying, "Muhammad, I am Gabriel, and you are the messenger of God." Islam threatened the vested interests of the Mecca elite, for whom religion was a major income source due to the heavy stream of pilgrims. Big business and the Mecca power networks were determined to stop him. Muhammad would not back down, so the establishment came down hard on him with insults, threats, economic pressure, and even assassination attempts. Muhammad was instructed by God to emigrate to Medina. The disputes and discord of the Medina tribes were healed by the spirit of brotherhood that Islam fostered, and Islam now grew quickly. In Medina, Islam imposed a high degree of discipline on its followers. Intoxication, gambling, and other licentious behavior was forbidden, whereas prayer, hygiene, and community life were encouraged. The culture of Islam created a dedicated Spartan group of men ready for any hardship in pursuing the objectives of Muhammad. The antagonism with Mecca escalated as raids led to 3 battles, the first at Badr. Badr was a great victory for the Muslims, despite the fact that their small force of 300 was outnumbered 3 to 1 by the Meccans. The second battle was at Mount Uhud, where an army of 1,000 Muslims was defeated by the 10,000 troops of Abu Sufyan and his allies. The third encounter was the Battle of the Trench, where Abu Sufyan attacked Medina in 627. Muhammad defended Medina with a trench, which was an innovative tactic that stopped the Meccans and resulted in an impasse with only a handful of casualties. Muhammad's final move on Mecca began with his declaration that he would perform the pilgrimage of Umrah. He set out with 700 men. The Meccan army blocked him and the truce of Hudaybiyah was agreed. For the next 10 years, there would be no armed confrontation and the raids on the caravans of Mecca would stop. But the Umrah of the Prophet and his group would be deferred till the following year. So the next year, in February 629, the Prophet, with 2,000 of his followers, entered Mecca. There was no opposition. Mecca's top military commanders, Khalid and Amir, were now Muhammad's generals, and Mecca's leader, Abu Sufyan, was now Muhammad's father-in-law. After 15 days, Muhammad left and returned to Medina, which was to remain his home and his capital till the time of his death. In 632, Muhammad made his farewell pilgrimage, his last visit to Mecca, and established the ritual of the Hajj forever. He made his farewell sermon to the crowds, which encapsulates some of the main principles of Islam. Regard the life and property of every Muslim as a sacred trust. Return the goods entrusted to you to their rightful owners. Hurt no one, so that no one may hurt you. Treat your women well and be kind to them, for they are your partners and your committed helpers. I leave behind me 2 things, the Quran and my example, the Sunnah, and if you follow these, you will never go astray. Muhammad returned home and in June collapsed with a splitting headache and a fever which burned him for 10 days. He lay in the room of his beloved wife Aisha, where he died, his head on her lap. Abu Bakr. People were in shock and couldn't believe that Muhammad was dead. Umar was shouting that he would kill anyone who claimed this, but soft, gentle Abu Bakr calmed them down. O people, to those who used to worship Muhammad, Muhammad is dead. But for those who used to worship God, God is alive and can never die. Muhammad is but a messenger, messengers the like of whom have passed away before him. Will it be that when he dies or is slain, you will turn back on your heels? The Medina leaders called a meeting to appoint a successor to Muhammad. They did not invite the emigrants from Mecca. They wanted a leader from among their own. Adult male Muslim, an old friend of the Prophet, and a gentle, kind, and wise man whose daughter Aisha was the favorite wife of the Prophet after the death of Khadijah. He was a respected elder of the community, a sheikh. His acceptance speech at the mosque was stunning in its humility and approach. I have been given the authority over you, although I am not the best of you. If I do well, help me, and if I do wrong, set me right. Obey me for so long as I obey God and His messenger. But if I disobey God and His messenger, you owe me no obedience. At the center of power were the two father-in-laws of Muhammad, Abu Bakr, Umar, and the two sons-in-law, Uthman and Ali. All four, in turn, took the caliphate. Abu Bakr selected as his commander Khalid bin Walid, who was to prove one of the great generals of history. Abu Bakr dressed simply, lived plainly, and accumulated no wealth. He spent his savings in the service of Islam, took only a small salary, and when he was short of money, he even milked his neighbor's cow for extra cash. He was fair and just, he was much loved and respected. His instructions to the Muslim armies were lessons in morality and compassion. Do not betray, do not carry grudges, do not deceive, do not mutilate, do not kill children, do not kill the elderly, do not kill women. Do not destroy beehives or burn them, do not cut down fruit-bearing trees, do not slaughter sheep, cattle or camels except for food. You will come across people who spend their lives in monasteries. Leave them to what they have dedicated their lives. Now advance in the name of God. But in less than 3 years, death overtook him. He was 63 when he died, the same age as the Prophet. But unlike the Prophet, who did not designate a successor, Abu Bakr clearly named Umar as the man to follow him as the second caliph. Umar was a hard man. He was hard on privilege, no favor and equality for all before the law. When his son was found drunk, the law was mercilessly applied. His son was lashed, 80 strokes without remission. The lashing killed the boy. Money was to remove the commander-in-chief of the Muslim army, Khalid bin Walid. This came as a surprise, since Khalid had already established his reputation as the unmatched expert in the art of war. Khalid was a hero of battle, and the Muslims believed that they could not lose as long as they were led by him. Umar wanted to establish that it was not Khalid, but God who gave victory. Khalid was the Achilles of the Muslim army, flamboyant and an expert both in personal combat and in the skills of command. He earned the title of Sword of Allah. Khalid led the Muslims to victory in the Ridda Wars, brought all of Arabia under Muslim control in just 2 years, and then in 637 won the historic Battle of Yarmouk, where he totally destroyed the 80,000-strong army of Heraclius, the powerful Byzantine emperor. Under Omar, the Muslims liberated Palestine without shedding any blood. The Caliph arrived not as a conqueror, but as a pilgrim, his eyes humbled with respect. When the prayer was called, he declined to pray in the church, but instead moved out into the porch. He later explained that he had done this to spare the Holy Sepulchre, which would otherwise have been converted into a mosque. The Covenant of Omar guaranteed Christians and Jews freedom of religion. Omar's conquest of Jerusalem stands in stark contrast to the savage reconquest by the Crusaders centuries later, with scenes of slaughter and cannibalism. Simultaneously, whilst conquering the Byzantine Empire, the Muslims also fought the Persians. A new commander was sent east against the Persians, Sa'id bin Abi Waqqas. Sa'id led the 30,000-strong Muslim army at the Battle of Qadisiyah against a Persian force of 60,000. The Battle of Qadisiyah broke the back of the Persian Empire. As the Muslim armies swept through the vast lands of Persia, there was little resistance from the local population, who did not see the Muslims as a danger. They did not massacre people, they did not seize their houses or their lands. They demanded only that taxes be paid and that people did not aid their enemies. There was no forced conversion to Islam, and the Muslims built themselves new garrison towns, Kufa and Basra, where they lived separate from the locals. This kept the locals safe from plunder and the Muslims safe from corruption and decadence. Omar discouraged farming and forbade property acquisition. The New Deal gave greater religious freedom and lower taxes. People were comfortable with the change. Meanwhile in Egypt, when the Muslims arrived, Egypt was a rich Christian nation where the plague had reduced the population to 3 million. The man who conquered and changed the destiny of Egypt was the remarkable and brilliant Amir ibn al-As, general, administrator, adventurer, and romantic. If Khalid was the Achilles of the early Islamic conquests, Amir was the cunning Ulysses. He was bold in Uthman. After heated discussions, the committee selected Uthman as the third caliph. Uthman was an easy man to like. Handsome, charming, and generous, he inherited millions and multiplied them. Whilst Ali was the son-in-law of the Prophet, Uthman had married 2 of Muhammad's daughters. He was not much of a warrior, but his skill in administration and the business of government were recognized and respected. He was literate and cultivated and stood out amongst the early Muslims who were passionate but poor. The third caliph was already an old man when he took office and was 82 when he was assassinated. In the first 6 years, Uthman streamlined the administration, improved the revenue system, built up the treasury and reserves, developed infrastructure, and continued the conquests. Herat, Merv, Balkh, and Kabul were taken. The first written Quran was also finalized. But some have critiqued Uthman's style of government for his favoritism of his Umayyad relatives who were given all the top jobs. The people didn't like it. Resentment, jealousy, and discontent spread like cancer through the Muslim communities as they watched the Umayyads accumulate vast fortunes and enjoy their lifestyles of conspicuous consumption. Conspiracies and rebellions grew. In 656, dissidents from the 3 garrisons of Fustat, Kufa, and Basra marched on Medina. The rebellion had begun. The rebels from Egypt demanded that Muhammad, the young son of Abu Bakr, be given the governorship. Under pressure, Uthman agreed and the rebels prepared to march home. It seemed that Uthman had diffused the crisis. But in an unexpected twist of events, a rider coming from the palace was seized and a letter found from the caliph to his governor in Egypt demanding the arrest and execution of the rebels. The column turned back to Medina to confront the caliph about the double cross. Uthman denied knowledge of the letter, and whatever his weaknesses, he was never a liar. The rebels shouted insults at the caliph, calling him a liar and an incompetent old man. They demanded that he resign. If he refused, they would kill him. Uthman behaved calmly and with dignity, but he refused to resign. The next Friday, as he spoke in the mosque, the caliph was attacked with stones and knocked unconscious. He was carried home, where he was barricaded in by the rebels. As the assassins moved in for the kill, Uthman did not resist, but peacefully read his Quran as he waited for the inevitable. The assassins burst into the room of the caliph, Muhammad bin Abu Bakr among them, and the swords were plunged into him. The blood of the Caliph of Islam drenched red the pages of his Quran. His young wife, Naila, threw herself on her husband to protect what was left of his body, and a sword sliced off 2 of her fingers. Again and again, the assassins plunged their blades into the body of the Caliph till finally he lay dead. Then they departed. That night, the Caliph was buried not in the graveyard, but in a field, a neglected Jewish burial ground. Ali. Ali was an honorable, brave, sincere, honest, selfless and wise man, but by worldly standards, his career was not a great success. Expected to succeed the Prophet, he was passed over time after time for 24 years till he finally became Caliph in 656. His rule lasted less than 5 years and was scarred by civil war, strife and division till his assassination. In his short rule, Ali fought a civil war against the camp of Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, Talha and Zubair, and fought an insurrection by Muawiyah, who was the Umayyad governor of Syria. He also had battles against the Kharijites, the religious fanatics, one of whom killed him. Some historians suggest that his mistake was the decision to change the governors, the powerful administrators who controlled the territories of the empire. His advisors begged Ali to hold off at least till he had consolidated his position, but Ali believed it was his divine prerogative. His supporter, Ibn Abbas, warned Ali, "Thou art brave, but innocent of the craft of war. Hath not the Prophet himself said, 'What is war but a game of deception?'" The decision to go after Muawiyah was to divide his territory and cost him his caliphate. When Ali demanded Muawiyah's resignation, Muawiyah blamed Ali for the murder of Uthman and stirred emotions to a frenzy in Damascus. He readied an army of 60,000 to take revenge against Ali. Ali had no option but to announce an expedition against Muawiyah. Seeing an opportunity to unseat Ali, Talha and Zubair made their move and proceeded with their army to Basra. Ali tried to negotiate but was unsuccessful. The rebels demanded vengeance against the executioners of Uthman. The 2 armies joined battle with Aisha on a camel. Zubair and Talha were both killed, but Aisha fought on, fearless, as arrows rained down on her, one wounding her arm. Finally, Ali sent her brother, Muhammad, to persuade her to calm down. Over 10,000 Muslims died in the Battle of the Camel, a tragic day. Ali forbade loot or taking of prisoners. Friend and foe alike mourned Zubair, who had saved the life of the Prophet on the field of Uhud. Aisha returned to Medina, where she spent the rest of her days. She remained a celebrity and a source of hadith, dying at the age of 66. In Kufa, Ali prepared his army, 50,000 strong. In Damascus, Muawiyah was ready with an even larger army led by General Umar. They met on the field of Siffin. Once again, Ali tried to negotiate a compromise. Once more, Muawiyah demanded punishment of the regicides. Negotiations failed and the armies joined battle. Ali was a great war general, brave without fear, and after weeks of fighting, victory seemed within his grasp. Umar then suggested a ruse that their lancers enter the fray with leaves of the Quran fixed to their spears, crying, "Let God decide." This provided justification to cease fighting, and the troops endorsed the call for arbitration. Each side would appoint an arbitrator, and the 2 arbitrators would decide the matter according to the principles of Islam. At Duma, the arbitrators, Abu Musa and Amir, met before a large crowd of spectators to decide the future of Islam. Several names were discussed as compromise candidates, but all were rejected. Then Abu Musa proposed that both Ali and Muawiyah be deposed and the people elect whoever they will as Caliph. Amir agreed, and the 2 umpires came before the spectators to announce their decision. Abu Musa spoke first, saying that in the interests of keeping the peace, he proposed both Ali and Muawiyah be deposed. But then to his surprise, Amir announced, "He has deposed his fellow and I too depose him. But as for Muawiyah, him I confirm." Abu Musa was thunderstruck. "What can I do? He agreed with me," then swerved aside, but the damage was done. There were now two caliphs, Ali in the east, Muawiyah in the west. Ali and Muawiyah settled into a working accommodation, but the fanatical Kharijites now decided that they must kill both caliphs and also Amir. The conspirators planned the triple assassination for a Friday when all three leaders were to lead the prayers: Ali in Kufa, Muawiyah in Damascus, and Amir in Fustat in Egypt. The assassins prepared swords dipped in deadly poison and slipped into the mosques. Amir sent a substitute to lead the prayers. The substitute was killed, Amir escaped, and the assassin was caught and killed. Muawiyah was stabbed and the poison went into his bloodstream, but timely and expert medical help saved his life and he survived and recovered. Ali was stabbed and the wound was fatal. Before dying, Ali told his son Hassan, "If I die, his life is forfeit, but see that thou mutilate him not, for that is forbidden by the Prophet." Since he was clearly dying, they asked him if he wanted his son to succeed him. He replied, "I do not command it, neither do I forbid it."